Hello, everybody, and good evening. Today's date is October 25th, 26th, 2025. This will be the second bonus episode for the Halloween themed stories. Sit back, relax. We're going to dive right into it. But first, I did wanted to say that hopefully you guys liked the very first episode. I'm kind of feeling this whole content and storytelling and stuff like that in story format. So I definitely would appreciate some sort of feedback or emails or comments, whatever that might be in regards to the content. See if you like it. If there's any particular stories you guys want me to say that some of you would like to share and are writers yourself, by all means, please feel free to email, send me a direct comment or a link, and we can go back and forth on the stories and see what we can share. All right. With that being said, let's go ahead and embark on something pretty creepy. Have any of you ever moved into a house that has little crawl spaces or places in the house that for some reason you just know are hiding secrets? Whether it be a cellar or an attic or even a room with a loose floorboard. And in your mind, you always conjure up these stories or scenarios in your head in which, damn, I wonder what would that look like, right? Well, be careful what you look for or what you ask for, especially if you are a realtor yourself. I'm sure you encounter a lot of homes that have a lot of secrets within them, and basically you're kind of left to kind of put pieces of the puzzle together. I mean, at the end of the day, you were trying to sell the house. Well, in this particular story, the house writes back. So sit back, relax, enjoy the rest of your evening. Turn up the volume, enjoy this podcast. Like I mentioned, share, subscribe, reshare, comment, give me all the smoke that you possibly can think of for this. And again, will be a second bonus episode. I'm probably going to be releasing one more after this, and then we will pivot again and go back to our normal stuff that we typically generally cover on this channel. So, with that being said, let's get ready. All right, and here we go. That house that writes back. The first sign that the house was listening was the smell. Not the usual cocktail of plaster, dust, and lemon cleaner. Something much older, threaded through it, like wet paper left too close to a heater. Elena noticed it the day that the electrician opened the living room wall to replace the brittle cloth wiring. When the electrician left, a pile of lath and plaster slumped upon the baseboard, and from the cavity, a draft sighed, cool as deep breath through teeth. It was a little bit creepy. Helena reached inside for a scrap that apparently had fallen. Her fingers found a cloth instead. It was a book wrapped in canvas, edges stiff with paint, as if someone had tried to seal it shut. The canvas peeled away reluctantly, leaving her palm freckled with flecks of white. And underneath was a journal. Blue cloth covered, rubbed thin. Corners rounded by a hand that had turned them into way too many times. The first page was a map of tiny scratches, like caution marks. The second held a name written in the school teacher cursive writing, which was very rare, so you know this thing was old. Iris Valley, 1962. Below the name, a sentence faint as if someone had tried to erase it with a sleeve. If you find this, the house has opened its mouth again. Elena chuckled, alone in the echoing room where her voice sounded like someone else's from the corner. She had closed escrow 2 weeks ago, signed a stack of papers that made her legally bound to root out and mend other people's choices. The realtor had called it a classic, which meant the floors complained and the windows had opinions. She wanted a place with bones. She'd gotten the marrow to, apparently. She set the journal on the dining table and made coffee. The pages stuck to each other, reluctant to unfold their capillaries. As she pried them apart, the smell bloomed, warm dust ladled from another decade. The entries were precise. Dates in the top corner, a neat lattice of letters. A woman with patient penmanship had recorded ordinary things turned sideways. First entry, April 11th, 1962. The house has begun again. It started with a creak at 3:11 in the morning. That thin sound like a book opening itself. I will not call it a mouth, that gives it too much. I have stuffed the door frames with newspaper to stop the drafts with headlines in them. But now even the headlines whisper. Second entry, April 14th, 1962. I hear the pages when it's quiet, not turning, rubbing as if they're sandpapering each other to make sparks. The sparks will fall into the floorboards. The floorboards remember. April 21st, 1962. Today the page wrote first. Elena paused. The coffee cooled in her hands. She glanced towards the opening in the wall. It looked back. A rectangle of darkness with a pale ribcage of lath beyond. Zzz, her phone buzzed. Her brother's name lit the screen. You alive? Marco asked, voice full of traffic. How's the money pit, sis? Charming, she said, because stubborn hope is a sibling of denial. Found a time capsule, old journal, smells like a basement made of bug spines. Read it later, he said. You haven't slept. Also, pro tip, if the journal starts addressing you by name, set it on fire. I'm not a character in it, she began, then she stopped. On the table, the journal had settled open farther. 2 extra lines now visible beneath the date. She would have been sworn they weren't there a second ago. Today the page wrote first, it said. It said my name, Marco said, not seeing her face. Text me if the walls start talking, all right? They won't, she lied to hang up. She continued reading. April 21st, 1962. Today the page wrote first. It said my name at first. Sounded it on the paper. They are not letters so much as grooves. If you run a finger over them, your eyes closed, you can hear it through the pads. I tempted to stop. I am tempted to leave the journal on the wall where it belongs, but Mrs. Hart from 2 doors down brought me a pie and said that the house is good at keeping things and I do not want to be what it keeps. April 24th, 1962. I left the book on the wall at breakfast. It lay on the table beside the jam. My husband asked if I was rehearsing a trick. I told him I was, but it's not for him. I'm starting to get a little worried. Another entry, May 2nd, 1962. The page wore a date ahead of me, May 3rd, 3:11 a.m. The hinge will sigh. It's not a prediction if the house plans to do it, is it? It's more like a schedule. Elena flipped the page. A crust of something brown ringed the corner like dried tea. The next page was blank, then the next, and then unexpectedly a different hand, smaller, cramped, some letters bitten off. October 5th, 1978. Mom said not to, but I wanted to see. The book knows when you touch the wall. It's soft there, like old bread. If you press, it gives. That house does not like it when you press too hard. I heard it drink. Elena turned another page. November 1st, 1978. There is a place you can stand where your voice doesn't leave the room. It comes back to you with an older echo. The book calls this the throat. I think it's the stairwell. When I whisper into the gap between the newel post and the bottom stair, something repeats the word with an accent I don't have. November 3rd, 1978. The book asked me to write for it so it could rest. I think it is tired of hearing only itself. November 6th, 1978. It wrote my name, Lydia, but I never wrote my name in it. It must have listened to my mom calling me from the porch. It must be tired of hunger. Things that are hungry learn your name. I am leaving my voice in my ears and none of the house. I will not whisper again. The handwriting changed back, then leapt forward again. Names flickered: Iris, Lydia, and Mr. Keene, who underlined everything and wrote it in hard pencil. And someone who signed only E, as if the house cared about modesty. The dates marched through the years, then stopped after 1989. They were only blank pages, as if the house had skipped forward and landed in Elena's lap with both knees. She closed the journal gently, as if it might bruise. The room had gotten darker without the sun actually moving. A cloud must have shifted, or something enormous thing passed through the window without touching the glass. At 3:11 in the morning, the hinge sighed. Elena's eyes snapped to the sound of the door of a book inhaling. Thin, papery, obedient to the schedule of a stranger's handwriting, she lay listening. Houses are loud when you try to sleep in them. They fold in cold whispers along ducts, complain to nails, but this was none of that. This was a deliberate breath taken by something that had appointed itself her roommate. She padded barefoot downstairs. The living room smelled like glue and mothballs and her own shampoo. The opening in the wall had been covered with a temporary panel, but the drift threaded around it like a tongue finding a gap where a tooth used to be. The journal lay on the table where she'd left it. She did not turn on the lamp. She did not want to see if the words were already there, glowing as if the ink were an animal with its own heat. She touched the journal's cover. It was warm. "I'm not afraid," she told her own, and felt how her voice bent in the stairwell, deciding whether to come back or not. She flipped to a blank page. Nothing had appeared, not yet. The paper waited with polite clinical patience, like a doctor letting you decide how much to confess. Elena picked up the pen and wrote, "This is Elena. Do you belong to this house?" The answer cut itself into the page from beneath, the fibers puckering under the letters. The press marks were deeper than her pen could make. "I belong to whoever reads me." She swallowed. The air had gone thick like syrup, sweeter, as if something had done her a favor, an expected one. "Who are you?" she wrote. A throat. A hinge. A mouth you stepped into when you signed? "I didn't sign for a mouth," she said too loudly. A loose picture hook ticked against the wall. She softened. "I signed for a roof." "Then why did you take out part of the wall?" The letters arrived without punctuation, like a breath held too long. "Electrician," she said. "And I didn't take you out, you came." Silence is not quiet when it's full of listening. The next line engraved itself. "You will put me back." The page felt warm under the palm. She realized she'd been bracing her hand there like a lover reassured by pulse. I might, she said after I read. Do not read twice. Her laugh startled the lamp into wanting to be turned on. You and YouTube, she muttered, then said, why not twice? Twice makes you a page. She shut the journal and went upstairs, carrying the book as if it were a hot plate. In bed, the smell of warmed paper followed her. She slept a thin sleep, cut into ribbons by dreams of floors that remembered and doors that practiced opening when no one watched. Morning put geometry back on everything. The house put on its day face. She drank coffee. She decided names don't matter to empty rooms and said one anyway. Hello, Iris, she told the air. It held the sound and then let it go like a hand not returning a handshake. For a whole week, Elena left the journal closed. She painted the plaster patches. She bought the rugs to tell the floors a story that didn't end in splinters. The house behaved. The smell receded to a tint, like a color added to white paint, that at first looks bold and then dries something you can't remember choosing. On the 8th night, she woke because she hadn't heard the hinge. The absence of the scheduled sigh took the shape of a thought. You forgot something. She went downstairs to prove she hadn't. The journal was open on its own to a page she hadn't written on. The blue cover glowed dimly as if the cloth had soaked up daylight and was giving it back grudgingly. November 9th, 1978. I told myself I wouldn't whisper. I told myself I wouldn't leave where I could be found, but my mother was sick and the house made the quiet field bigger, and I needed to fill it with words. Any word, even mine. So I stood at the bottom of the stairs and said my name. The house gave it back and the book wrote it down without me. Lydia, Lydia, Lydia. If you find this, please don't say your name in the throat. It knows how names fall. Beneath the neat lines, a child's drawing in pencil, a staircase, the newel post like a knob on a tongue. Elena put the book immediately on the wall that morning. She slid it back into the cavity and pressed the panel tight. She told herself this was a boundary. She told herself, too, that boundaries held better when they are slightly impossible to keep. That night at 3:11 in the morning, the hinge sighed anyway. She went downstairs. The living room was colder in the way that of rooms have decided your comfort is not relevant to its plans. The panel lay on the floor. The journal sat open to the bottom stair. She didn't touch it. She sat above it for a second step, feet on the cold wood, chin on her knees. She watched the blank page in case it made a move, as if the letters had legs. And after a minute, the paper rocked itself up and a line appeared with patient slowness. Don't make me write you. Then tell me what you want, she said. Names. I won't, she said. I've made my name too many times already. It is tired of me. It deserves to rest. Then write mine. Whose? Mine. She almost smiled. You said you were a hinge. Everything gets called the thing it uses. You call me house. And so now I have to be it. Something shifted in the ductwork and turned on the room 1 degree colder. The page creased slightly, like a brow. Elena saw her reflection thinly in the varnish of the stair tread. A woman who looked like a story trying not to be written. Fine, she said. I'll name you and then we'll be done. She took the pen. She wrote on the blank line with a careful hand, as if the loops and bars were stitched and the page was skin. Throat. The pen resisted. The words sank with more weight than ink should have. Door. The page warmed the way a forehead does under a palm. Mouth. She stopped. It felt too much like calling something closer. She crossed it out. The ink bled. The page wrote its own name beneath. a few degrees crooked like a child copying a blackboard. Welcome. That's not a name, she said, throat dry. It is what you say to a guest, and what you say to a meal. The house breathed, the window glass ticked as if someone pried it with a small metal tool. In the hallway a draft moved, smelling of book pines and pennies. She should have been afraid, she was, but it coexisted with something else that surprised her. Anger. The kind that comes when something you have bought with your good, adult money insists you are the child. No, she said to the room. I live here. You house me. That's the order. The page blurred. Her eyes stung. She blinked it clear. The writing had changed. It was not a reply. It was a recipe. How to keep me out. Number 1, close the book. Number 2, do not count steps aloud. Number 3, don't leave your name on your tongue overnight. 4, never say come in to a door that is already open. 5, leave something older than blood in the wall. Older than blood, she repeated softly. What's older than blood? Paper, promises, dates, and debts that have outlived the people who owe them. She saw to the stack of documents she signed. The mortgage was heavy enough to bruise, its numbers solid as iron. The idea of sliding a contact into the wall made her stomach dip like a missed stare. I have a receipt, she said, and heard the ridiculousness in it. You always do, the page wrote. So she did it anyway. She tore a check stub in half and fed it into the cavity behind the temporary panel. She added a folded grocery list from last week, a recipe card in her grandmother's hand that she couldn't bring herself to cook from because it was written from someone with time, a paper crane she'd kept since college that was frayed into a lump goal. She laced them together with a strand of string from a box of a moving twine. She sealed the panel with blue painter's tape, a ceremonial barrier made of optimism and glue. At 3:11 in the morning, the hinge did not sigh. It inhaled and held its breath. Elena did not sleep, which is a kind of agreement you make with the night. I will watch you if you stop moving without me. In the morning, the smell was gone. The house wore its bones lightly, like a good coat draped on a chair. She made toast. She almost called Marco and decided not to explain any of it to someone who would talk in jokes, because jokes are bridges you can run across when the river rises. She wanted the river seen. That afternoon, a knock came. 3 patient taps. Knuckle on wood, not the front, the stairwell. She stood at the top of the steps where the newel paste made a throat and felt the house weep. Not today, she said, not twice. She went downstairs. She opened the journal one last time. A single line waited, written in the faint tenderness of a concession. Then let me keep something to remember you by. She looked around. What do you give a house that has everything you own in it? She took the chain from the old door, the useless chain she'd found in a drawer, the kind that makes you feel safe without reason. She slid its cold length into the wall behind the panel. The metal clicked on wood like punctuation. She pressed the panel into place. It held. The journal cooled like a pan pulled off heat. Weeks passed. The hinge forgot its hour. The stairwell spoke in normal echoes, the pleasing kind that makes a home feel like it has a throat that sings rather than swallows. Elena worked late, paid her bills, made soup, learned which floorboards sparred her neighbors when she came down for water at midnight. Sometimes in the blue hour, she unwrapped the canvas and ran her hand over the cover, feeling the warmth that wasn't hers. It stayed room temperature, obedient. She turned to the front and traced the faint groove of Iris's name, the previous owner. The careful letters of a woman who had wanted to keep her handwriting from shaking in a house that made everything tremble a little. On a rainy day in November, she flipped to a blank page and wrote with a pen that caught in a few old grooves. "If you found this, the house is listening." Then lower, "You can make it listen to you." She slid the journal back into the wall. The house shut its mouth, or learned to chew slower, or learned her name was not food. To be safe, she never counted the steps out loud. She never said "come in" to any door that had already decided itself. And she dreamed of paper. She dreamed of it folded into cranes and boats, things that move away from mouths. Some nights late, when the rain has a drummer patience with the window glass ticks like a monotone, she stands by the stairwell and whispers a word that is not her name into empty space where voices age. She said, "Welcome," she tells the house. She said it like a warning and blessing, which are often the same shape in different tones. The house holds the word and returns it, softened, not hungrier. And behind the panel, inside the wall where the journal sleeps, paper rubs paper like dry leaves, and what they make together is not a spark, but a kind of heat that keeps the houses warm. October 1st, 2025. Panels come loose from a floorboard, and the new residents of the house find it. Curious at first, as they were currently painting the room. Unfortunately, the house had been placed for sale by the previous owners that had gone missing about 5 years ago. The house was on the market for 2 or 3 years with nobody finding it. "It's a classic," the realtor said. Stacy lowers herself to find this loose floorboard and find out what it is, because you never know, some of these houses hold secrets. Inside of it looked to be a piece of cloth wrapped really, really close together. And inside of it felt like a book. She pulled it, opened it. Inside was a journal. And outside the journal simply said, "Do not open. The house is hungry." Stacy paused for a moment, unwrapped the cloth, and opened it to the very first page. If you are reading this, it's too late. Followed by first entry, April 21st, 1962. The house breathes. Man, that last story was definitely pretty creepy. I could only imagine finding a journal in an abandoned house or a house you're trying to buy. I'm sure it's probably, some of us are probably thinking the same thing, like, why would you open it, right? But hey, sometimes you run into things that you're always like second guessing yourself right after you do it, and then next thing you know, yeah, it is what it is. This next story's theme is pretty creepy. So for a lot of people out there that live on their own, like they always tell everybody, nothing happens after 10 o'clock at night. So just be mindful of that. This one is pretty creepy as itself as well. It's called Quiet Hours, about opening the door at weird hours of the night. So hopefully you guys enjoy. Sit back, relax. This is story number 2, and let's keep it going. Quiet Hours. The knock came at 2:04 a.m. 3 soft raps evenly paced, like a Menatron set to her pulse. Mara lay very still in her bed and counted to 10, a habit therapist had recommended for middle-of-the-night anxiety. 10 beats and the panic usually passed. Tonight at 9, the knock returned. 3 soft raps. The same careful rhythm as if whoever stood on the other side of her apartment door had rehearsed. She slid out from the covers, cold air combing the bare skin in between pajamas, hem and ankle. The city outside was a hush of tires and wind. Her building kept quiet hours after 10 o'clock, so it was weird. The manager, a college kid named Liam, who inherited the job when the previous one moved, suddenly had posted signs with cartoon owls to remind tenants to be considerate. The owl's eyes looked like coin slots. Mara reached the peephole and nobody. She stood with her face to the door until her breath fogged the brass, and then she realized what felt wrong. The corridor felt occupied. She could feel a person's attention the way you feel a microwave hum, silent, invisible, but thick. Her phone vibrated on the nightstand. A notification lit the screen. Unknown number. Through a text message. "You're awake," it read. She stared until the text blurred. She didn't respond. The typing bubble appeared anyway. 3 gray dots, swelling and shrinking like something breathing. The unknown number texted her again. "I like your lavender soap." She threw the bolt, slid the chain, and stepped back. The chain was the original kind, brass links that looked sturdy if you don't think about physics. Her cat, Fig, hopped off the chair by the window and patted over, tail flicking. Fig was friendly with everyone except empty hallways. Right now, her ears flattened and she hissed. A tiny kettle noise. Another knock. 3 soft raps. Further down the hall, or the ceiling, the building breathed. It was an old Victorian spliced into apartments with thin walls and long shadows. A house that remembered voices. Unbeknownst to her, even though she reluctantly did not want to do that, she typed back, hands shaking. "I'm sorry, wrong number." The bubble appeared and disappeared like a magician playing with a coin. The unknown number responded, "No." She called the number. It didn't ring. The line picked up and held air. On her end, she could hear the faintest sound, like someone chewing a mint. She hung up and put the phone on silent and slept with the chain on for the first time since moving in. In the morning, there was a note wedged into the doorframe, plain white paper, folded precisely in thirds. Inside, the shape of a hand had been rubbed in graphite. Palm lines, the whirl of a thumbprint so detailed it chalked her own skin when she touched it. No words on the back. A greasy ring as if the paper had been set under a coffee cup somewhere not entirely clean. She turned it over again. In the darkest hour, part of a thumb, a tiny rigged spiral broke. An old scar. Mara had one just like it. She'd burned her hand on a crooked oven when she was a teenager. Her thumbprint had a small crescent interruption like a parentless, added by a careless editor. She flew to the bathroom and scrubbed her hands until the lavender smell arose like ghosts. The mirror had the wrong lighting for comfort, yellow, honest. She lifted her thumb, the old scar was still there, a match. Coincidence, she told Fig. She blinked slow, then stared at the door like it had whispered her name. She took a deep sigh, and work helped. At lunch, Mara took a longer route, weaving through bookstores and a hardware shop where she bought a second chain for the door and a length of dowel for the sliding windows. Liam met her on the stairwell when she got home, fidgeting with a ring of keys the size of a fist. "Everything okay?" he asked. He had a permanent expression of someone who had just remembered an exam. "Someone knocked late," she said. Weird text. She held up the note. He frowned. "Prank," he said too quickly. "College kids in 4B. The thumbprint is mine." He tried on a smile, and it didn't fit. You know how patterns look like patterns because you're looking for them? Pareidolia? My I'd like to locks rekeyed, please. He sighed, relieved. That I can do. He held up the janitor ring, metal clicking like a wine chime made of teeth. Tomorrow morning? Tonight. He opened his mouth and closed it. Sure, I'll grab the kit. At 9:46 p.m., the quiet hours began at 10:12. Liam still hadn't come back. At 11:03, Mara heard footsteps on the hall carpet, bare, thoughtful. Fig bristled and disappeared beneath the couch like spilled ink. At 2:04 in the morning, the knock came. 3 soft raps, just like the previous night. She didn't move. Her phone vibrated again. I have a key. Don't make me prove it. She was calling 911 before she felt herself choose to. The dispatcher's voice steadied her, turned the room less empty. Don't open the door, the woman said. Police are en route. How long? 15 minutes. The knock again, lower now. The sound of someone kneeling. A whisper bled through the door like cold. You called? The voice said conversationally. A woman's voice, older than Mata by 200 cigarettes. Good, you should document. You should always document. She clamped her hand over her mouth. The dispatcher asked her name again. Mata couldn't get the word out. In the pause, the whisper went on, gentle, nearly affectionate. You smell like lavender and fear. It's a powdery note, the fear, like chalk on blackboard. The peephole showed nothing. The wood around the knob creaked. The deadbolt twitched but held. The chain sighed, stretched a fraction, and sang a high, wire-thin note that had set her teeth on edge. Mara, the dispatcher said, stay with me. The hall fell silent, and then a soft, dry sound, paper sliding under the door. Another note. It lay face down on the floor and shook slightly on the draft. The sirens arrived like a blessing sung from static. Red and blue smeared the far wall. Boots, voices. SFPD. Mara opened every lock with her veins buzzing and her vision sharp around the edges. The corridor lay polite and empty, a lipstick stain of shoe dirt. The sterile handrail, cheekily finger-smudged her heartbeat in her throat. She waved the officers like an airplane ground crew. They searched, they asked questions. Liam arrived, hair sleep-matted, eyes startled wide. I was just sick, he mumbled. Stomach thing. The officer with the neatest handwriting took the note with gloved hands. The words inside were block letters, careful like a kid copying a teacher's straight lines. Quiet hours are for listening. The officer backed it. We'll request an extra patrol, he said. Get you on a watch list. The phrase made her stomach turn. To be put on a watch list was exactly what the unknown number wanted. After they left, she installed the second chain. She set the dowel on the window tracks. She put her toolbox by the door like a polite barricade. She slept for 20 bruised minutes at a time. Morning held its ordinary light like a shield. Mata showered and dressed and almost convinced herself it had been theatrical anxiety. Too many true crime podcasts, too much caffeine. She grabbed her tote and stepped into the hall. A deadbolt lay on the doormat. Not hers, not marked. On the metal, someone had pressed a thumb to leave a print in oil, then wiped it off, leaving only a smudge that matched her hand exactly. The crescent scar's tiny break in the spiral. Her breath crumpled smaller. She knocked on Liam's door hard enough to bruise her knuckles. He opened after a long minute, eyes gummy. Did you give anyone a copy of my key? What? No, he ripped his face. We haven't rekeyed it yet. I'm sorry. She held up the key. He stared. He licked his lips. We use Schlage, he said, as if that mattered. That looks like a... Stop, she said. Please just do my locks." He nodded. He didn't fetch the kit. Instead, he shut his door gently between them, the latch catching like a secret being kept. That day, Mara worked from home. Her laptop fans hummed like a small animal sleeping. Fig crawled into her hoodie and became the shape of a heartbeat against her ribs. Every hour on the hour, a text arrived. Unknown, 11 a.m. Unknown, 12 p.m. Unknown, 1 p.m. Time pretending to be a person. At 5, unknown. Commute. At 6:12, unknown. Your building stairs smells like old pennies. At 6:13, a soft whistle outside her door, a 3-note phrase with the middle note held longer. A sound as distinctive as a fingerprint. She recorded it. She sent it to the detective on the card, officer that had left. The auto reply said out of office until Monday. It was Thursday. That night she put a chair under the knob and slept on the floor with Fig on the crook on her knees and a hammer under her pillow, which is the kind of magic that only works if you don't think about it too hard. She dreamed a long corridor of doors she had to relock in order while something walked behind her whistling, and the 3 notes and getting too close at the end each held the tone. At 2:04 a.m., the knock did not come. The chain did not sing. Her phone face down, lit the ceiling blue, unknown. Open. She didn't. She lay with her eyes open until the dawn had gray of a bruise and the birds auditioned their morning anyway. Liam rekeyed her locks at noon with exaggerated cheer. There, he said, holding up the old cylinder like a loose tooth. New keys, don't lose them. He gave her 2. A third glinted in the kitchen light, half hidden in his palm before he tucked it away. She looked up quickly. He smiled too fast. Spare for the office, he said, in case we need to check in on a leak. I don't leak, she said. That night, she put tape over the peephole. She dragged a dresser in front of the door. She set a pan of marbles on the doormat on the inside. A trick from a message board. If someone opened the door, the marbles would scatter and sing a chime of alarm. At 1:31 in the morning, a soft whistle. At 1:32, the faint scrape of metal on metal. At 1:33, silence that felt like a smile. The chain lifted with the gentleness of a parent tucking in a child. The bolt turned. The dresser's weight shifted almost imperceptibly. The pan of marbles vibrated but didn't tip. The door eased an inch, then 2, and stopped. Something exhaled as if disappointed in her for being harder than expected. The door closed. The lock returned to its resting place like a lie told well. Mara didn't move. She counted to 100. She texted 911 because her voice felt broken. By the time the officers came, the hall was empty again, and the stairwell was a throat that knew how to swallow footsteps. The young officer with neat handwriting frowned sympathy and wrote a suspect unknown like a prayer that worked better if you believed it hard. Do you have any enemies? He asked. Only the usual kind, she said. People who like to watch. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. Mara closed the door, slid both chains, and leaned her head against the wood until her forehead cooled. 3 days passed, and on the 3rd her phone pinged. A Find My alert from an AirTag she did not own moving with her. She tore the apartment apart. She found it taped under her desk chair. Round and innocent, an egg of attention. She smashed it with a hammer until the plastic cried. At 2:04, no knock. At 2:17, a soft whistle inside the vent. At 2:30, her bedroom mirror fogged slowly from breath that was not hers. She wiped a circle on the glass and the fog returned from the other side, slow as a hand. In the window behind her, reflection. The 3-note whistle arrived like a childhood memory. She turned. Nothing. Only the pale rectangle of the courtyard and the shadow to the fire escape like a ribcage. On Monday, the detective came. She was small and tired and kind in the brisk way she keeps people alive. "You're not the first," she said, paging through notes. "Same pattern last year, 2 blocks over. Older building, lots of shared walls. A person who seems to know everything because they only ever show up when you're alone, whistling the notes. Did you catch him?" The detective taped the paper-bagged evidence. "Quiet hours are for listening." "We stopped them." "How?" "We told everyone in the building to stop listening back." The detective looked up. "Do you have a neighbor with a new door chain?" Mata thought of Liam, half-hit key, and how he apologized like someone who thinks being sorry is always enough. Fake hissing at an empty wall while Liam hovered with his 2 loud keys. "I have a manager who forgets to lock his own office," she said. That night, Mata made tea. She arranged 3 cups on the counter, 1 for her, 1 for the detective, who existed even after she left because exhausted kindness lingers. 1 for the door, which is not to drink. She sat at the table and waited. At 2:04, the knock. 3 soft raps. The 3-note whistle held a fraction too long in the middle. Mata stood. She did not speak. She pulled the chain from under the knob. She unhooked the chains one by one, loud enough to ring. The peephole was still taped. She peeled it off, and I looked back. Brown, bloodshot, unnervingly unrevealed, too close to be processed as a person. Only iris had wet. Mata smiled without humor and turned her phone to video. She pressed record and said very clearly so the microphone could earn its keep, "Liam, door cameras are motion activated. The detective told me to show you." Silence held like breath. The eye flinched. The soft whistle tried to begin and failed. Keys clinked in a pocket. She could hear the dryer cone chime of them through the wood as if the door had a stethoscope. "You don't have the 3rd key anymore," she said, "and the office door is locked." A whisper returned, same cigarette paper voice as before, fiend older, now trying another shape. "You don't have proof," it said. "I have your scar," she said, and held up thumb to the peephole. On the other side of the door, a breath hitched, a tiny sound of a person realizing they are seen. "I'll call the police," she said, and then, lower for whatever else was listening, "Quiet hours are for listening." The eye retreated. Footsteps went down the hall. The stairs creaked in sets of 3. The outside door sighed. Its old sigh. Somewhere in the space between walls, someone whistled the 3-note phrase to comfort themselves and got the middle note wrong. The detective arrested Liam in the morning with a warrant, and that specific tired kindness that does not gloat. He had a roll of painter's tape, a set of keys he wasn't supposed to have, and a receipt for coffee at 2 a.m. 3 nights a week. He had nothing as dramatic as a basement full of photos. He had a phone full of notes about schedules. He had a habit of listening until people felt like noise. When the police car shut down on him, the city sound felt like wind in tall grass. Mata leaned against the building and let it pass over her, the way water passes over a stone, loud then soft. The detective handed her the paper bag with the note inside as if returning a borrowed book. "Change your locks again," she said. "Tell your neighbors to do the same during quiet hours. Turn up the TV up, fill the building with bad late-night sitcoms. Leave less room for anyone else's attention." Mata did. The owls of the building side looked less like coin slots and more like eyes, which is to say they looked like they were people. People played laugh tracks too loud for a week and then forgot. Quiet hours returned to being quiet. Sometimes still, Mata wakes up at 2:04 in the morning and listens to the silence like a person checking a healed scar for a phantom ache. Sometimes a pipe clunks in her bones and remember how to be afraid. Sometimes a distant whistle raises slowly on a kettle. She keeps the bag note in a drawer with batteries, takeout menus, and an extra dowel. Fig, who forgives the world more easily than Mata does, sleeps with her back to the wall. The lavender soap runs low and is replaced and replaced again. There is no twist where the stalker was the wind all along, or the ghost in the building, or her reflection. There was a person. There is a door. The chains are stronger now, and if you press your ear to the wood during quiet hours, all you can hear is your own blood going through its business, which is the kind of music a home makes when it belongs to you. Finally,